So I will call to order the May 7th, 2019 Lake Mills City Council, and roll call, please.
Ms. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Buchholz?
Here.
Mr. Fields?
Here.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Here.
Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Fritsch?
Here.
I'd like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 4, correction and/or approval of the regular and the work session for the City Council minutes of April 16th, 2019. We can do those together, can't we? Okay, yes, we can. If you would like to make a motion to that effect.
I move approval of the regular and the work session, City Council minutes of April 16th.
Do I?
Second.
Yep, I have a second. Are there any changes or questions on the agenda, on the minutes? Seeing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, moving on to item 5, correspondence. Do we have anyone that would like to share correspondence that they've received since our last meeting?
I've got a couple of items. I received a nice email about the traffic down by Bartles Beach on Ferry Street. Just expressing concerns that we keep an eye on the speeds down there. I know we've moved a traffic radar sign down there. Hopefully that's helping a little bit.
I think it did.
And I know as summer rolls around and it gets busier down there, that hopefully we can work with Mick to patrol that pretty good, or hopefully the road construction moves up to where that won't be as busy down there. And then the other suggestion, which we may want to consider with boat traffic starting to pick up, is if we could possibly do a 4-way stop at Ferry and Lake Street during the construction period as a temporary item with all the boat traffic. I don't know if that's something we could consider.
Which street?
At Ferry and Lake Street.
Ferry and Lake.
Had a couple conversations with one of the people down on Lake Street there. They're asking about when the stop sign's going in the alley. They're kind of curious. Some of them down there use that as a way to get around with the construction, and said it's still pretty parked in on a regular basis and a lot of traffic in there. And I did receive one phone call from actually a town resident on Sandy Beach Road, and I walked them through the plan, what's proposed down there. And actually, they were very for it. They said what we're going to do is going to help them out a lot and improve the value of their properties, so that was a good thing. And then Steve and I attended the Joint Rock Lake Committee this afternoon, so they're doing their presentation on Sandy Beach also. That'll take care of me.
On the item about Lake and Ferry, they're looking for a 4-way stop there on that corner.
Right, just Ferry has the stop sign
Yeah,
now.
okay. I'm so used to it that way, it just didn't seem wrong. Okay, all right.
I received a phone call from a constituent about wondering if we could reopen the discussion about bulk pickup and whether or not it's working the way that we had intended it to. And I thought maybe on a future agenda, we could just have that discussion. And also another phone call from a resident about a neighbor that's parking on the tree lawn. And then finally a phone call having to do with Sandy Beach boat launch, and I directed him to the meeting that's going on tonight.
Okay,
I had two emails. The first one I sent off to Steve, and I actually sent it off to our liaison for the road. They're looking at the possibility of marking some of the roads better, because they've had semis coming down certain roads, and they've had to turn around. They've been tearing up some of the tree lawns. And then another one was concerning a post that the police police department put out there about dogs, because on Facebook, because there's been some talk about dogs and leashes and stuff like that out there on Facebook, and the police department put the post out there what the ordinance was, and there were some questions about that, whether or not we could change some of the wording. So I sent that over to Mr. Drescher, and I believe you talked to him also, Vicky.
Yeah,
So-
it's not clearly worded.
Yeah. So that's all I had.
All right, so maybe that needs a look-see. Okay? Anything else?
I had a comment from a citizen about the pumping going on Mulberry Street. That, despite 24 hours of it being, of the engine roaring, that they were able to tolerate it.
Maybe in the city manager's report, we can ask a question about that. And, okay, moving on to item number 6, questions and public comment. All right. The public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comment may also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you registered with the city clerk before the meeting was called to order. The state's open meeting law discourages action by the council on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes and state your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet provided on the podium. So if you would like to come to the podium to make public comment, you can do that at this time.
Hi, my name is Susan Volanek. I live at 506 West Lake Street, corner of Lake and Ferry.
Okay.
And I know everybody is aware of why that area of Ferry is of great concern with the sidewalk directly next to the road and the very narrow road right there. So I have just been noticing and anticipating what happens normally as summer rolls in. I was glad to hear the possibility of a 4-way stop at Lake and Ferry, because when it's a crowded beach day, Lake Street is lined with cars on both sides, so that when you are there at Ferry, even if you do a regular stop, you don't necessarily have great view of who is coming. The bikes started using the road this last weekend, making it even more dangerous. And that's, if you're on the bike trail and you're coming into town, you are on that same road. I agree. One of my suggestions was to make a sign or signage somewhere at the beginning and the end of that detour that this isn't the route for semis. There's no room for that, and the cars have to really actually park and wait for the semis to go by, and if you have kids on the sidewalk and bicycles in the road. My alternative, my first idea was the 4-way stop, and my alternative was big signs that say it's a 2-way stop at Lake and Ferry, because right now the cars are used to no traffic coming on Lake since the road has been closed. So it is a rolling stop for most of them at best. And then when the road opens up, those people are the ones that are going to have the right of way. So either a 4-way or somehow marking it like that. The other intersection that is bad for the same problem is College and Ferry, and that's where people are leaving that downtown intersection right now and trying to detour around. It's the opposite. College has the stop and Ferry has the right-of-way there. But the people coming on College are often treating it like a four-way stop, so they stop or slow down. And we have been cut off, even though we're on Ferry and there's no stop sign, and I have watched it with several other cars because just stop and turn. Unfortunately, everybody that's driving that detour is irritated by the detour as much as we are, so the cars are really close together. Definitely most of them speeding, but the stops are minimal and the cars are way too close together. So I just wanted everybody to make some plans for what happens when Lake Street opens up and that gets a little bit more confusing, and when the beach gets filled up with cars and more kids and more dog walkers and more bicycles are using that same little tiny stretch. Thanks.
Thank you. And we appreciate you coming to us and letting us know.
Yeah, we watch out our windows, or in our yard, we almost see accidents all the time anyway in the summer. So now, we're just kind of shaking our heads because of how many we've almost seen. You want to come up, I'll fill it.
Good evening. My name is Mike Niesman. I live at 113 South Ferry Drive. We're neighbors of Sue's, and I thank you for letting me be here tonight. I won't belabor what she said. You already know, and I think I sent an email to Mr. Fields, and I appreciate his concern. And I also appreciate you. I think you folks have already moved the flashing light warning it from 25, which was about 50 yards up, to 15. It is amusing. I was on my bike, so I was able to watch this gal go from 26 to 29 before she left the camera zone going into the park. But at least I knew how fast she was going. A couple of the things, and I think I outlined it in the email, that might help would be speed bumps. Then you don't need to patrol. I mean, if you don't speed, you don't get bumped. To me, they're a wonderful thing. I've lived in many cities around the world where they have them, and they're a good thing. Talked to the police department, and as Steve was saying, that they're going to increase their patrolling. I've contacted them and offered them our driveway anytime they wish to park there right on South Ferry, because they can't really park on the street, but they could certainly park in our driveway. And is there anyone who doesn't automatically hit their brakes when they see a police car? I'm a retired physician, and I can hit your patellar tendon and you'll get a reflex, and I'm sure your foot will also reflexively hit your brakes when you see that cop. And word gets around. A couple of pinches, it gets on Facebook, and it would help. I would ask you to consider a Children at Play sign somewhere in there. They have them on the county roads. Child here for one child. There's a lot of kids down there in summer. My worry is that they're going to come zooming out from behind Bartle's Beach barn, sort of, and it's a blind corner. And these folks are zooming down there. From about 6 to 7, it's a speedway. Starting about 7:15 to 8, it becomes bumper to bumper for the school traffic. Also flashing lights around the 15. It's nice that camera is really good coming from the south now, but coming from the north on Ferry, you just don't pay attention to it. And I can see why. But so if, some of those signs that have that flashing light around it, around the 15, would call their attention to it at least. And then finally, I guess that was about it. So appreciate your efforts on this. We're really, really concerned about it this summer, because it's going to be like, we actually cut down an evergreen that was on our boundary with the Manleys on Bartle's Beach, because with the increased traffic and speed, him getting out of his driveway was getting harder and harder, so we actually cut that down so he could see better. So we have some skin in the game, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, appreciate you coming tonight, giving up your evening to speak to us. Thanks a lot. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak during public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. City managers report. Steve?
I provided you with the Police Department monthly report, the Jefferson County Economic Development Annual Report, and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Joint Lobby Day letter.
Do we at this time have anyone going on May 22nd to that?
Not that I know of, nobody's contacted me.
Okay, did you have anything else you want?
Yes, the county radio system hasn't had a significant impact on us. They went with the type of digital radio system that we have, so it's not going to have a big cost to us. South Main Street, I think you'll notice that 2 lanes are paved. They paved several curbs and are starting to pave the outlying. So like at Veterans and Lake Street, they're starting to push out into the actual intersections of Lake and Veterans. So they're really paving there. They have the water main all the way down to Lake Park Place.
Really?
Yes, and it is tested. So people have been asking this, I'll tell you. They lay the water main, and then they lay the sanitary sewer, and then they come back, and after the sanitary sewer is laid, they start doing the water services, because then you don't have to worry about pulling the trench box through the water services. And so from that standpoint, they had everything on the east side of the street disconnected and connected up to the new water main, and then they pull the sanitary sewer box up the street, and then they run everything on the west side over, and then they'll come back. They have to test the sanitary sewer, so they'll do a mandrel test, and they'll do a compression and air pressure test, and then they'll come back and connect up to the sanitary sewer services, which to a certain extent have been kind of a circus in itself. But not totally unexpected. And then they'll do the stormwater. And so then you'll see the stormwater running up the street after that. So if you see them coming and going and coming and going, you know why. Water, sewer, water services, sewer services, and stormwater. Then they'll start preparing the base for the street, and then they'll pour the concrete. Come back. I don't know exactly when they'll come back and do the sidewalks, but they'll come back, do the sidewalks, and somewhere at some point in time, they'll come back and do all the grading and seeding. So they're actually progressing pretty well. Pretty pleased. Even though there have been some really, really odd water and sewer connection stuff that's on the street.
Would you say we're on track?
Yes, we're on track. I think they will have Veterans to Madison Street open first week in June, unless something unusual happens. That's why, you want to be careful about when you start changing traffic patterns and those types of things. But as discussed, but we can get into that. Actually, I guess I have that on here, ferry drive request. Four-way intersection changes, particularly temporary ones, create more accidents than they solve because people aren't looking for them, and you will have a lot of head-ons. That street already has 2 of the biggest traffic calming devices in the history of streets, which is a narrow street and a curve, a sharp curve. So if you're having problems with that already, some of the other traffic calming devices aren't going to work. The best one is traffic enforcement. If we can get the police officers into their driveways and set them there for a while, that's going to be our best bet, particularly in the short run. If you were looking at making a change on that intersection permanently as 4-way, semis know they're not supposed to be on that route unless they have business in that area, which none of them should have, And all the schools, delivery people know that they're supposed to go down Grove, not Ferry. So if anybody's on Ferry, they should be calling, if they see a semi on Ferry, they should be calling the police and getting their license number, or at least the name of the company. We have had some change orders, which isn't unexpected, but we went from, the original bid had, or equals, we upgraded to a class 52, which is our standard specification on water main. Same with Muller fittings. We found some unexpected storm sewer that we had to abandon. That was another $10,000. The water main in Commons Park was directly under the sidewalk, so we had to remove most of that sidewalk. So we're going to pay about $18,000 to replace that sidewalk. And all the related temporary improvements and back and forth on that. What else? Probably most of it. We had to do a couple manhole relocation things, or storm inlet relocation things that cost a little bit of money, but not a lot. But it's still up in the $130,000 total right now. There have been more change orders, but they weren't ours. Verizon will probably get a nice bill. Not Verizon, Frontier will get a nice bill. There are some private property owners that have agreed to pay for some things, storm sewer, water, those types of things. But that's about it. Like I said, the water is tested out and ready to go, and the sanitary sewer is probably right behind. Like they probably did that yesterday. We have our weekly meetings on Tuesdays at 11. They generally last at least 2 hours. We have our Mulberry Street weekly meetings at 10 on Wednesdays. They're a little bit faster. We have had some problems with historic properties and some of the related features of them, so like fences and carriage walks. But we have engaged Mead and Hunt and Emily Pettis to handle those for us and make sure that we can get those cleaned up as required. The gas company is pretty much out of there. I think they finished up and are just doing some cleanup work. Frontier is actually probably 95% out. We've started removing the poles. In fact, we probably got them all out by now. So that's good. The only change orders we had, again, were from class 350 to class 52 ductile iron. Both projects have had haul road issues, as will the school district. And so we've videoed roads, and the state has videoed them, and then we'll compare them at the end to see what kind of damage was done to the roadways based on the hauling that's occurring. American Way, the contract is done. We had our pre-con. The erosion control is up. We have all our bike trail easements out and being taken care of. They are starting construction here probably in the next week on CP Avenue South. There's about 400 feet there that needs to be done, which would be in front of what would be or just south of the well there at American Way and CP. And then they'll run the bike trail all the way along the north side of American Way from the spur all the way to Brookstone. And then they are going to do the grinder pump that services the Dog and Shrubs site just north of the Light and Water Building. Then they will build American Way, and then they will do the 21 lots in Brookstone. So they should be done by the end of August.
Lots of things going on.
Yeah. Sandy Beach presentation is going on right now for the Joint Rock Lake Committee. They will be doing one for the Rock Lake Improvement Association, the Parks Board, and Plan Commission. You should have it down by the time they get to the Plan Commission. We have been ordered to do an archaeological report by the Fish and Wildlife Grant, which we kind of anticipated. So we're working on contracting with Commonwealth, which is the one we've historically used. Used to be under Katie Egan Brewery, doctor from UW Milwaukee, and she's retired, but a lot of the people that went with her are in there. We're still online for the grant deadline, should have that ready to go. Steve, you know that we're putting a walkway into Fayville Park?
What?
Fayville's the baseball diamonds
Yeah, I
up
know.
off of,
What are we doing?
we're putting a walkway in from Badger to County Highway V, Taranina Park Road.
Good.
Is that along Highway B?
Yes. Fayville Park is between
Yeah.
Brewster and East Mills Drive on the south side of the road.
And there's no sidewalk there.
There's no sidewalk there. That was one that I've historically recommended we run from where it stops at Topeka all the way to East Mills. That's mainly city property, so we'd have to fund it ourselves, but there's none there, so he's running right now one from the sidewalk on Badger North to where we connect in with the one that that's proposed.
That'll help with all that development across the street also.
See, the library is starting to move forward, and you probably have the sidewalks and the steps done here shortly if they're not already done. We will be doing the grading and the stormwater detention, and we still have the company under contract for the concrete and asphalt from last year, so that's, hopefully that'll get
Talking about in
done.
front of the building?
The steps should be done. If it's not, it's coming up real short. Same with some of the sidewalk around the side.
Okay.
The rest of it, there's a group of items there. One is the grading out of the I should call it stormwater detention basin. It's actually a drainage swale or it's a stormwater ditch. It basically allows the stormwater to run into it and then percolate into the ground. And then there are a bunch of pipes coming off the building that will tie into that, and we'll run all the parking lot drainage into there. And then we'll run a new driveway all the way from
Lakeside.
Madison Street north through, and then we'll build the new parking lot behind it, and then it'll actually come out onto Oak. So we're heading down that road.
When we do that, will that become a one-way street?
A one-way drive?
Yeah.
We could make it that. We haven't made any proposals right now. Let's get it in and see how it works.
It's pretty congested when you meet a car on that one.
Lead service lateral reporting, we did our April report. It's in. We're very, very close to done. Now we're discussing how they're going to calculate our replacement requirements. If you remember, you have to do 7% of your reported number. We used to have like 27, so we had to do 3. Now we're wondering if they're going to allow us to stay at that number, if they're going to go with what our current inspected number of lead LSLs are, which is going to be about 300. So you're going to be looking at about 27 replacements a year that's required. Now, of those, we've already done 120, 130, maybe as high as 150 here shortly. But that's a number that we'll have to look at because that gets pretty expensive on our end. Radium. DNR has approved our radium request, which was to abandon the lower portion and raise it. There is a report which I'll get out to you. It goes over all the alternatives. The abandonment, in my opinion, is about a 5 to 10-year fix. So we're going to have to be thinking about what we're going to do in the future. And I think that there are some good options laid out in the report for future items. Automated meters are still progressing. The corrosion control is about a quarter of the way through their reporting. They have done some analysis and submitted it to the DNR, but not a lot. Water tower painting is going to start shortly. I don't know if you've noticed that they're starting to pull equipment up there. And we've warned all the contractors, Mulberry, American Way, South Main, and the high school, that if they're doing any type of water use, particularly flushing after they've gotten their water test, that they have to notify us and they have to run it at a certain rate, because we don't have a water tower to back up the amount of water use.
Can you clarify on the fact, because some memos have come back, the tower is only going to say Lake Mills now, correct? There was not enough room for the
City of.
or a logo.
Yes. In fact, Paul came in, I sat down and said, you got to move the city of to the center. He says, well, actually, they've come back and told me that they can't make it fit on there that way. And so he said.
It is now only updated.
Yep, it's got the new font, but it's
Fine.
just going to say Lake Mills. It'll start gray and kind of move up to the bottom of the bowl, and then it'll turn kind of a cream white and go over the top. And then the Lake Mills will be in blue, similar to what was in the presentation that Aaron did.
And then we're going to just do fireworks off the top. But it sounded like it, we're going to go up.
I'll be out there with one
I'm not going
sparkler.
there yet.
One sparkler, we're going to put one sparkler on them.
Okay. I'm more along the lines of antennas. I think we have 3 of them up there.
Yeah, that's true, we do have that.
So, I mentioned already that the CSM, the Brookstone development is moving along. We've got all that in. That's all the stuff with the, well, I shouldn't say that. We're going to record the plat yet. That's the one thing we have to do yet. Rock Lake Activity Center, they're still moving along.
They've been
I
real
s-
busy, haven't they?
Yes, they have. Yeah, they're moving right along. The 26 acres, we're still negotiating with the DNR. Our proposed purchase is hanging on, because they have to start on June 1st, and DNR is supposed to get back to us on May 18th. So we're kind of,
Is there anything we can do? No.
I don't know. I guess I'll find out on the 18th. Other than that, that's all I got.
Can I ask a question on Mulberry Street? The pumping of the water, does it look like we're going to ever get to the end of that water pumping out of there? I mean, we don't have an artesian well or something under there, do we? Or we hope we don't? Seems like a lot of water coming out.
You probably have a very shallow water table, which would be consistent with the environmental report that we had off of the Walgreens project. It said all that water flowed in a very shallow water table towards Rock Creek. And so probably most of the water in that northwest area is flowing southeast towards Rock Creek in a shallow water table. And that's probably why it was so hard to keep Mulberry paved with this. Most of the streets in the city have very little, if any, stormwater had. and they still lasted a lot longer than Mulberry. So yeah, you probably got some substantial groundwater problems there. They will, until they get the water and sewer in, and the stormwater, they will probably keep those pumps running to dry out that site. At that point, once those are in, the street pavement, it shouldn't impact that. But that, for the water and sewer and stormwater, they'll probably continue to pump.
It's really quite fascinating, the plumbing that's there. You can-
I was surprised at how many points they had. They've got them like every foot and a half.
Yes. Yes, it's-
So,
I thought maybe we could sell tickets to watch the water run.
I was wondering if we could use it to fight fires in that area.
Yeah, or, yeah, there you go. Well, let's hope it doesn't cause a problem. That's all I'm hoping for.
What happened on Pope? Why did they tear that up? Is that part of anything that's going on with Mulberry?
Yes. A substantial part of Mulberry drains to that site and then down. So they had to come in, and let me rephrase that. Historically, that whole section there of Mulberry didn't drain anywhere. It just sat in a street. So we developed plans to run it over to what used to be called the Clark Street right-of-way, which is that area we have between those properties. And then it drains down to Owen Street at the intersection of CP, and then it runs out back into Rock Creek. What we did is we did an overall drainage study, because if you look at Grand Street and Prospect Street and all those areas back in there's no stormwater drainage there either. So we had to figure out, to pick a location where we could run all those storm sewers to drain those areas in the future. And so that was why that area was picked. And so Pope we have open ditches down the rest of the way, but that's filled in because there's more development along that edge between Pope and Mulberry. So we went underground, plus it gets really deep, because I think that manhole in the center of Mulberry is about 11 feet deep. Because it's a long stretch, a long flat stretch running down Grant and Prospect, so. That's kind of why that was done that way.
Okay.
Well, there's certainly a lot going on. I've run into quite a few people in town who didn't understand that South Main Street was state highway and that Mulberry Street had financial backing from the federal government. And they thought we were just doing this and poor planning on why we ripped up all these roads at one time. And when I told them, well, we sort of had a few things here we didn't have control of, and then they felt a little happier. So, but no, we would not have done all these streets at one time if we hadn't had it work that way, so.
We actually tried to delay one over the other, but they wouldn't delay Mulberry, and
Right,
and
right.
Main Street got delayed because the state couldn't afford the first bid.
And actually, this year's been, knock on wood, better so far, weather-wise.
I think last year it averaged that it rained every 3 days. So we would be way behind.
Well, let's hope it continues. And thank you for your report. Anybody have questions for Steve before we move on? Okay, item number 8, acceptance of minutes of the Library Board from March 19th, 2019, Planning Commission from February 26th, 2019, Parks Board from March 20th, 2019, Police and Fire Commission from March 21st, 2019, Police and Fire Commission for April 3rd, 2019, and Police and Fire Commission for April 10th, 2019. All of these minutes will be placed on file, and we will continue on with item number 9, council business. with board and committee appointments. Under number 1, if we had any changes, I did not hear from any council members who wanted to change. I am very happy with the work that's being done by the council members on their committees. And unless someone wants something considered here, I'm happy to just continue as we've been with the councils, with the committees we've been serving on. So, okay? All right, we're good. Number 2, Planning Commission appointment for Steve Homan. Now, what, should we do these each individually? Or can we do these in a group, or what can we do, Dan?
Last year, they were all done together.
You
Yeah.
can do them all together.
Hmm?
You can do
Right.
them all together.
Can I just read them down the row? Okay, Public Works Board Member, Mark Picard. Most of these are renews from current members. Parks Board, Tim Sprecher. Library Board, Sean Bullock and Eric Beaver. Joint Rock Lake Committee, Robert Volnick. We do have a new appointment for Fred Hosey to the Board of Review. Zoning Board of Appeals for Bennett Rupplinger, Karen Rutz, Karen Reamer, and we have a new appointment, Crystal Reed, on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Economic Development Commission reappointments for Carol Burrows and Kristen Silva. Ethics Board reappointments for Karen Geshko and Randy Radke. And number 11, extraterrestrial, territorial, not terrestrial. Sorry, we're going to stay on the earth. Okay, Zoning Committee, Steve Homan. And so we could do those all at one group. Is there a motion to reappoint and appoint the new people on the list I just read?
So move.
Second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch? Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
And we want to thank everyone who is serving the city under these committees. All right, and Steve, you have 2 city manager appointments. You want to speak to those? Or should I? Well,
I'll
let you.
have the announcement to the council that I'm reappointing Margaret Belk to the Housing Authority and Terrence Trevathan to the Police and Fire Commission.
Okay, we don't approve those. Those are just your appointments. Okay. Item C, licenses, tavern operators licenses. There are 3 names. I'm wondering do we want to do them individually? Or how do we want to do this? Should we do them individually? Okay. Does that sound okay? Okay, would you read the first one, please?
The first one is Kelsey Bodart.
Okay. Is there a motion to give Kelsey a tavern operator's license?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And there's no real discussion on that. Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay. Second name be read, please.
The second name is Connie Blackmer.
Okay, is there a motion to issue one to her?
I move we approve tavern operator's license for the applicant.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would you call the roll?
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, would you read the third name, please?
The third name is Tyler Clothier.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve a tavern operator's license for Tyler?
I'll make a motion to deny the license for Tyler Clothier, based on the applicant not meeting the qualifications for a license.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny. Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, so thank you for taking care of that. Item D, Resolution 1918, authorizing the purchase of public property on a 113 Sandy Beach Road. Okay, who's going to speak to that? Okay, Steve, all yours.
You want to do a motion first, or do you want me to?
Sure, if you give me a second to get my computer back up here, because I was working off my other thing here. Do you want to read the motion while I'm doing that?
Resolution 1918, authorizing the purchase of public property, 113 Sandy Beach Road. Whereas the City Council of the City of Lake Mills, pursuant to authority conferred by the Wisconsin State statutes, has caused an offer to purchase to be made for property with a postal address of 113 Sandy Beach Road, Lake Mills, Wisconsin, that would be useful for, among other things, the construction of stormwater detention basins, bicycle trails, and electric substations. And whereas the offer to purchase has been negotiated by the city manager is attached, now therefore be it resolved this 7th day of May, 2019, by the City Council of the City of Lake Mills, that the city manager is authorized to complete all documents necessary to purchase the property that is the subject of the attached offer to purchase in accordance with the terms of the offer to purchase, and that the said purchase price shall be $161,000.
Okay, we have the motion in front. Do I have someone to make a motion to approve this?
I move Resolution 19-18.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Discussion. At this point.
Can I?
Yes?
Okay. This is consistent with TID District Number 5 plan. We're looking at actually making a commercial lot more viable, a better right-of-way, and a redeveloping of the district, which in an area that was considered blighted by state standards. I wouldn't say it's blighted by what most people would think of blight, but by state standards it is. And so as consistent with our plan and what we hope to do down on Sandy Beach Road, we had discussed this as part of that plan and have moved forward with this purchase and have negotiated it and recommended it to the city council.
Where, for people's enlightenment, where is this parcel?
It is on the north side of Sandy Beach Road, across the street from the car wash.
Laundromat car wash area there?
Yeah. It's the first house west of Main Street on the north side of the road.
Does this include that lot that's kind of next to it? Up to the
No, the
bowling
empty
alley?
lot is a separate item.
The lot to the east is owned by the city. The lot to the west is privately owned property.
Okay.
There are two other lots there that we're looking at.
So this one is adjacent to the city lot on one side.
Yes.
Got it.
So I guess just a couple things to note then. Because it is in that TID district, when we purchase that, it'll take it off the rolls. And my understanding is we don't have the funds in the district to actually pay for that right now. So then there won't be any increment building in there until we can do something with it and make that a viable product that someone could purchase and put something, and then that would build the increment plus get it back on the tax rolls.
We will lend TID number 5 money from the fund balance, and then the TID number 5 will pay us back as it starts to generate funds.
Okay.
We have been negotiating with developers in that area already. I anticipate that we'll see quite a bit of construction down there, Dan, in the next 6 months?
With South Main Street, yeah.
You may see a couple developers agreements and definitely one sale of property for us, so.
That's good news.
Good. All right, any other questions for Steve about this item? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Moving on to number E, Resolution 1919. And, hold on a minute, let me get to that. Oops, go back. There we go. Should we need to read the resolution, please.
Resolution 1919, in appreciation of public service to the City of Lake Mills from Chris Evenson. Whereas the City Council of the City of Lake Mills desires to recognize and honor Chris Evenson for his years of loyal service to the City of Lake Mills and its citizens. And whereas Chris Evenson has served the light and water utility of the city with a desire to provide the highest level of service through his valuable talents and expertise for the past 37 years. And whereas Chris Evenson has devoted numerous hours to provide positive contributions to the operations of the light and water utility while exhibiting loyalty and dedication to the City of Lake Mills, enthusiasm for his profession, and building lasting relationships with his coworkers. And whereas Chris Evenson's attention to detail, professionalism, and leadership have made a meaningful and lasting contribution to the City of Lake Mills. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Lake Mills does hereby recognize the dedicated public service and career of Chris Evenson and extends best wishes for an enjoyable retirement.
And at this time, we'd like to meet Chris and present this.
Should we have a motion
Let's have a
first?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we better do that.
I move.
Yes,
I move Resolution 19-19.
I'll second it.
jumping the gun here. Okay, and call the roll, please.
Is there any discussion?
The only discussion is congratulations, and hopefully whatever your next endeavor is pays off as well for you.
Well, we're
Yeah.
gonna miss Chris. He has been something in these 37 years.
I'm sure many citizens have been grateful for you coming in the middle of the night to get the power back on, probably lots of times.
Or to shut it off?
Or to even find it. Sometimes we made you look and look and look, didn't we?
Yeah,
So,
that can be a thankless job, but
Well,
thank you for doing it.
right. So, well, with that, I think we will do our vote, and then we would like to meet you up at the beginning, okay?
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Yes. All right, council members, let's go down and meet Chris and give him his plaque. Yeah, let's carry that. Thank you for. We would like you to stay forever, Chris, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
Days I decided that.
Let's go out there and then maybe,
Easier.
did you want to catch a picture?
Yeah, I'll take a picture.
Let's go out here and. Okay.
I sure didn't know this was gonna be.
Well, you know, it's important. Well, if we could clone you, we would.
Oh, right.
I don't want to hang around with famous people.
And there he is. There we go.
Wow.
Come on, get closer
Get
so
closer,
we can get.
Thank you very much.
turn your plaque around over at it.
Are we all in or?
Yeah, you guys just take like a, there you go. Oh, we're gonna be comfortable, okay, everybody smile. No, I need the plaque. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I got to shake his hand, I'll let the rest of you shake his hand.
Congratulations. Enjoy retirement.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Congratulations. Yeah, the city is very thankful to have had you.
Thanks, Chris.
Walk in and go right out the door. All righty. So, and with that, we move to item F on the agenda.
This is Rich.
Yes,
Did you want the titles read for all of these next ones, or the whole resolution?
okay, just the title usually.
Okay.
Yeah, unless somebody has some other requests, it's fine with me. Let me take a look here. Oops, there we go. Well, the first one's really short. So let's see, 1920, we could probably read that as is.
Sure.
But if we're starting to get the ones that are longer, we may not.
Okay.
You?
Diane, we have Phil Costin here for our financial advisor, if you would like him
Oh.
to speak and talk about
We
these.
do
Yes,
this
why not?
first?
Um,
Or should we make the resolution and the motion?
There's so many of them, it's either way.
Okay, tell me what we should do.
Why don't we have him speak first before you get to the resolutions?
Okay, we're going to let you be the man with all the answers. And would you give your name?
I will certainly do that, and I'll try to be the man with all the answers. Phil Costin with Ehlers and Associates, and nice to be with you, here tonight. We have in your packet a couple of documents. There's the resolutions, and there's a series of resolutions that you'll see, and I'll talk why we have these broken out like we do. The resolutions are prepared by Quarles and Brady, who is the city's bond attorney, and so they have prepared the resolutions. The pre-sale reports that are in your packet, I was going to spend a few minutes going through each of the pre-sale reports with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about the projects we're financing, the process, since some of you, I know some of you have been through this process, and then answer any questions that you may have. Procedurally, we're doing something a little bit different this time. What we have customarily done is we have come to you, had you authorize the bond sales, and then a month later come back to you with sale results and have you approve the sales that evening. We have a little step into this process this time, and what we're going to ask is that we're going to have like a three-step process here. The first step will be like you have done in the past. The resolutions tonight just authorizes us to proceed with these borrowings. I'm going to spend some time going through that. There's an intermediate step that at your regular meeting in June, another series of resolutions will come to you, and they're called parameters resolutions. And the parameters resolutions state that the bonds will be awarded if the parameters are met that have been laid out in the resolutions. And we work directly with staff and work with Quarles and Brady to put those resolutions and the parameters together. And then the actual sale will occur on June 12th, which is not a normal council night. It'll be a Wednesday, a couple days after your normal council meeting. And we're doing this for two different reasons. This time of year tends to be extremely busy in the bond market. I can tell you that every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're off somewhere. And what happens is that there is a limited number of buyers of bonds that are competing for multiple bond issues on Mondays and Tuesdays. The vast majority of municipalities around the country, not just Wisconsin, meet on Mondays and Tuesdays. And so if you look at a sale calendar like we do on a daily basis, there's a publication called The Bond Buyer that we get. Trust me, nobody else wants to read it but people like us. But the bond buyer lists all the sales that are coming on a particular date, competitive bond sales throughout the country. And if you look at Mondays and Tuesdays, they're just, this time of year, spring into summer, they're full, and it really restricts the number of potential bidders on your bonds. So what we try to do is try to, at this time of year, move bond sales whenever we can to a Wednesday or a Thursday, which we think will bring more bidders into play and ultimately, hopefully, lower the interest rate that you receive because there's less competition on those days. So that's reason one why we're looking to do this parameters resolution. The second is one of the debt issues is a general obligation bond issue. And when you issue bonds, and you'll see in here, there's a resolution that's a notice to the electors. And the notice to the elector resolution that you'll be adopting tonight states that they have a 30-day petition period if they choose to require a referendum. That's on all general obligation bond issues, not just yours, but all of them. And if you look at the normal cycle of when meetings are held, we need at least 30 days between the authorizing and the sale. We don't have that. If you just look at your normal meeting in May and your meeting in June, we don't have that full 30 days. That will restrict, again, the number of potential bidders. Some bidders will just say, we don't want to be involved in this. There's always the potential of petition. We want to make sure you're past that period before we bid on the bond. So in both cases, what we're really trying to do is to bring more bidders into the process to make sure that you're getting the best deal possible on the bonds that we are selling on your behalf. So the parameters resolution, which will appear at your next meeting, will establish those parameters. The sale will occur on the 12th. And we'll still prepare all the same documents we normally do, the sale day report, and that'll be provided to the city council, to all of you, and yet you won't have a meeting that night. So the document really just gets signed off on by staff to award the bond. So that's the process we're going through. It's a little bit different. This time of year, we sell a lot of bonds using this method, again, just because how many issues are out there on Mondays and Tuesdays. And also, we want to exceed that, get past that 30-day window on the general obligation issue. So that's the combination of why we're doing that.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Why are, I guess my question is this new requirements, or why haven't we done it previous?
Parameters. It's partly the time of year that we're in. The debt issues that are being done right now, I'll tell you, May and June are just, there's a lot of bond sales on the calendar. The 30-day petition period is not new. What has happened, though, is a lot of the banks and underwriters that bid on these type of bonds have become a little bit more aware of that. There may have been an issue somewhere we're not aware of, not in Wisconsin probably, where there was this backdoor referendum requirement, and they got burned. And now all it takes is that happening once in the country, and people are aware of it, and they just want to avoid that last hurdle. So it's not a new requirement. It's always been out there. It's a heightened awareness by the bond purchasers. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the pre-sale reports briefly here. There is two of them that are in your packet. The first one is for a sewer system light and water mortgage revenue bond. As you probably are aware, the vast majority of the projects that are being financed relate to South Main and Mulberry. We also have a water tower project in the water utility, but a vast majority of this is to finance the rest of the projects that are being talked about a great deal tonight. The issue amount that's being authorized, that we're asking to authorize tonight, is $6,325,000. This would be the 2019 A issue. In the city of Lake Mills, you actually do have a pledge of all three, water, sewer, and electric, as part of your revenue bonds. That goes back probably before our time, working with the city. And so whenever you issue new bonds, they're called parity bonds. They're on parity with the old bonds that are out there, and you need to have the same revenue pledges. So water, sewer, and electric are all pledged, even though the projects being financed are strictly water and sewer. There's no electric here. But again, we're pledging all three revenue sources. So what we're looking to finance here is to finance some sewer system improvements, water system improvements, again, primarily related to Mulberry and South Main Street. And then there is also, we're refinancing a small bank loan that was taken, or state trust fund loan?
A bank
Bank, no, I'm sorry, yeah, bank, in a lot of communities these days, sorry. A small bank loan that you have outstanding that you are really using as kind of a construction loan. We're going to be refinancing that as part of this as well. In this document, you'll see that what we're looking to do is really to finance this project over the 20-year window. We're looking at a 20-year bond. It'll have a 9-year call feature, meaning you could prepay the bonds, refinance the bonds anytime after 9 years. In the document, if you go to page 7, we do put together what's called a debt service coverage analysis. And this is, from our standpoint, this is what's really important in issuing bonds. We want to make sure that you have sufficient revenue in your utilities to be able to absorb this debt and pay off your existing debt. And on this page, what we're doing is we're identifying your 2017 year-end revenues coming from those 3 water, sewer, and electric revenues. We're taking into account your existing debt, building in this new debt to determine what your coverage is. And what coverage is how much revenue after all your O&M costs are available for debt service. And then you have to make sure that per bond covenants of your existing debt and new debt, you have a minimum of $1.25 of revenue for every dollar of debt. And you can see if you look at the second column from the right, you are well in the twos in the early years, and you drop down to about 160 or so, $1.60 of revenue for every dollar of debt. So,
Going with the 6. Hang on a second.
yep, that's fine.
Right here, under this one. It's way down here. It's on Resolution 1926. Is that where I got it?
Yeah, page 7 on that document.
Here we are.
L, under item L
Okay, there it is.
on the agenda.
Yeah, it's the pre-sale report under item L.
7.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. Is it, everybody on the right page?
Almost there.
Pre-sale?
Hang on a second.
See it.
Well, here, just use mine because
Yeah, I don't have
Saying
it.
we got to be $1.
Not under L.
I'm not, that's fine. It's okay, you can do whatever you need.
Okay.
So I'm on page 7 of that pre-sale report. I'm not sure what it is, board packet number, but. So again, we want to make sure, again, you have the necessary coverage and prove that out.
That part.
Whoops.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay, not a problem. I'll putz around with it a little bit.
There you go. Thank you, Steve.
Oh,
There we
I
go.
don't think you do
Yeah,
have it.
so again, if you look at this, under the coverage ratios, debt,
Oh,
you can
you
see
have
that,
They got it up there.
Oh, there.
once the new debt is brought online, we drop down to the 150s and 160s. So that's $1.50 to $1.60 of revenue for every dollar of debt, which means you're meeting that threshold to be able to issue new bonds. This takes into account only your year-end numbers from 2017. We understand you did a water rate increase that took effect in 2019. That's not reflected in the revenue numbers. So this is probably understating truly what the coverage will be going forward, and we've assumed no additional rate adjustments in any of the utilities beyond what's already in place. Okay, so this test really gives us the ability to sell the bonds. This will also be, from an underwriter or banking standpoint, they'll look at this as kind of credit quality. They'll look at this and say, how much revenue is truly out there? What's the security, and how does this look? So we want to see 150 or above to be considered a pretty strong credit for the utilities, and you meet that test. So that's what we have. If you go to the next page, there is a bond chart, and for those that like to follow interest rates and think about home mortgages and those kind of things, you can see over the last year, we've been, as usual, on a roller coaster. We are trending in the right direction. You can see over the last couple of months, we have seen rates drop. We really don't see a lot that's going to change in the market between now and the bond sale occurring. We think this is being timed pretty well. I'd like to take credit for the timing, but it's just how the numbers came together. But we think it's really a good time to be in the market, and we think this issue will have a significant number of bidders. knowing that we're moving this to a kind of an off, I'll call it more of an off day on a Wednesday, where there won't be as much competition as well. So that's the revenue bond issue. Any questions on that one? There is a.
Yeah, one question.
Yes.
So, looking at the graph then, I would assume that you're expecting it probably to fall in somewhere around 4.5 to, 4.8%, somewhere in there.
Actually, I think it'd come in lower than that. Revenue bonds are a little more hard to predict than general obligation. There aren't as many people that bid on those, but I would think we'd be lower than that. There's one other element here I want to just briefly touch on without getting into a lot of the weeds, and there's also some other good news with the utilities. You already have an existing debt service reserve fund. That debt service reserve sits out there, and it was funded essentially through these previous bond issues. You have some additional funds in that on sale day, we're going to be able to use to downsize this issue. So fully expect when it comes to the actual sale date that the $6,325,000 is going to be reduced from this number. So we think we'll come back with really good news on sale day. So that's the first issue. Any questions on the A issue, which is the revenue bond issue? Again, most of the projects are being done for the two main road projects that are being undertaken by the city. No additional questions? In your packet, I'll let you get to this before I jump too far into it. There is another pre-sale report, looks like the past one, but it says $2,385,000 general obligation corporate purpose bonds 2019 B. This is a general obligation issue, not, again, you're pledging your ad valorem property tax here. What you're funding here is a number of things, your 2019 street projects, again, the projects that you've been talking about. There's some special assessment projects that will be paid through special assessments, but you're borrowing that money up front. And then there's a really small piece that is related to tax increment district number 5 as well. That'll be funded here. Here too, this will be a 20-year issue. There are a few other capital items that we've been talking about with city staff. Those would have a asset life less than 20 years. They've been removed from this and they'll have to be borrowed separately or paid for separately. What we don't want to ever do is we want to make sure the debt issue matches the asset life and that we're not upside down with any project. So those have been pulled out. The projects that remain are primarily street projects that we fully expect would last for that time period. Here, as you see on the board, there is the project list. What we've identified again is streets at $1,862,000, special assessment projects at $426,000, and then this conservation project for TID 5 at $25,000. So the TID 5 portion is relatively small. What you see here is the kind of planning efforts that we work collectively with staff to make sure that we're not just looking at borrowing money in a vacuum. We're trying to kind of look a little more holistically at what the impacts of these are, and then also a planning model that allows us to kind of plan for future issues as well. So we've been going back and forth with city staff on this issue, on this structure, to make sure that we attempt to lessen the impact of these capital borrowings and make sure that they make sense from how they're structured, to make sure we don't see big spikes in tax rates as a result of this. We have also here included the breakdown of the projects on the next page. Steve, if you can pull that up. We have a breakdown. You can see that we have it broken down by streets, by the special assessments. The special assessments are going to be levied and paid for through assessments, but again, you're borrowing that money up front. And then the TID 5 portion, the small portion, broken out as well. And then finally, the last couple of pages really tie back to your borrowing capacity. making sure that you always retain enough capacity to deal with future capital items, make sure that you also have enough money to deal with any kind of emergency situation as well, and then the bond chart. Again, I want to just maybe page back a little bit to go through the timeline. On page 5, Steve, of that packet, if you go back a couple of pages, top of the page, I kind of talked about that process. Tonight, again, we're asking you to authorize these series of resolutions. That just gives us authorization to start proceeding to prepare all the documents necessary to sell the bonds. There will be a rating call set up with S&P sometime towards the end of May, early June. We'll have, again, the parameters resolutions in front of you June 4th, the sale happening on the 12th, and then the closings will occur and the monies will be wired on June 27th. So that's the time frame that's been laid out, really to meet the requirements or the needs of the cash coming in to the city to be able to pay for the projects that are being done. The resolutions, you can see there's a series of resolutions as it pertains to the water, the A issue, the water, sewer, and electric issue. There's really only one resolution. Because we're issuing bonds, we have to have all these separate resolutions by purpose. So you'll see in here, there's a series of resolutions that all tie back to that GO bond issue. And then it kind of comes back together in Resolution K, where you're saying that you're authorizing that full dollar amount. So they're being broken apart by purpose and then brought back together as a total issue of $2,385,000. That's why you have so many resolutions.
Doesn't end up being double, doing it twice, does it?
No, it's again, broken out by purpose, and then you have a total dollar amount.
It's pretty complicated stuff.
We hope to make it simple for you.
Well, it's definitely simpler with you here. I mean, we just need to keep you here all the time so we have the answers to all our questions.
We spend a lot of time going over, splitting out each portion of the project, determining how much money is needed for it, and making sure that we've covered, like the engineering and the contingencies and the actual bid numbers, so that we come up with numbers for each one of those categories, and they total up to for general fund, it's $2.5 million. That's what we're borrowing. But then you go through and it's broken down into each category, so you know what category we're spending it in, down to the $25,000 for tin number 5, which, if you ask, is to tear down the buildings.
Okay, so that moves us back to Resolution 1920, right?
Yep.
And, so, did you read the title for that?
I did not.
Okay, would you read the title for that, please?
Resolution 1920, initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $2,050,000 for street improvement projects.
Okay, so now this is part of the group of all the specific things.
Yep.
And we need a motion to approve
So move.
and a
I'll
second.
second it.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Anybody have questions on this particular resolution? Seeing none, let's call the question.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, moving on to item 21, Resolution 1921. Would you read the title for that, please?
Resolution 1921, initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $170,000 for sewerage projects.
Okay. I need a motion
So move.
and a second.
Second.
Who wants this? But we're giving, okay, we're fighting over the second here. Who's going to get it?
Steve.
You got
You
it,
mean-
Steve. Okay, Steve
He
was
was
the
the
louder one of the two, so you just have to get out there, Vicky, and really fight for that. So, anyway, okay, any comments or questions on this item? I think he did a pretty good job of explaining all of it for us. Call the question.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay. Moving onward to, let's get back to Resolution 1922. Would you read that one, please?
Resolution 1922, initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $140,000 for water system projects.
Move adoption of Resolution 1922.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call the roll.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay. Resolution 1923.
Resolution 1923, initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $25,000 for community development projects in tax incremental districts.
Need a motion for this one?
I move Resolution 19-23.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Moving on, 1924. Would you read that, please?
Resolution 1924, resolution directing publication of notice to electors relating to bond issues.
Okay. Now, this one's a little different.
Yeah, this is the one he said that because they don't have the 30 days.
Oh, yes. Well, let's get the motion and the second, if we can ask more questions. Motion.
I'll move adoption of Resolution 19-24.
Second.
Okay, and so this one is, like you said,
Yeah,
It's a notice that we publish with all the other ones that spells out exactly what the conditions are to the electors,
Yep.
so that they know what's going on.
thank you.
I don't-
Appreciate that.
It's pretty legalese anyways, but
Yep. Mhm.
that's what's required.
Any other questions about this? Otherwise, we will call the roll.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, moving onward to Resolution 1925. Would you read that, please?
Resolution 1925, resolution providing for the sale of not to exceed $2,385,000 general obligation corporate purpose bonds.
Okay, this is the one where we were looking at the explanation booklet.
All those other ones should total up to this.
Yes. Okay, anybody make a motion for this one?
I move Resolution 19-25.
Second.
Anybody have further questions before we vote? Seeing none, call the roll.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, moving on to 1926. Read that one, please.
Resolution 1926, resolution providing for the sale of approximately $6,325,000 sewerage system and light and water utility mortgage revenue bonds.
Okay, so sewer system and light and water. Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move adoption of Resolution 1926.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any questions?
So did I understand him right that since the way it's structured, this is the, oh, shoot, what was that word he used? I forget the word
Are
he
you
used, start
talking
with a
about
P.
the parameters?
No, not parameters. So,
Debt coverage?
yeah, so this actually, we use the income that comes from all three. So even though we're only doing work on sewer and
Water.
water,
It still includes electric.
yeah, the electric could end up paying
We-
for it.
We keep track of it as if it were an individual utility, and we divide up the bond according to the percentage, so we know how much was water and how much was sewer. But if there's a shortage in the revenues, they all cover it.
Okay,
So electric could be paying a portion of water, as it has historically for as long as Betsy has been here. But
It's all your fault, Vic.
that's what I
But,
heard.
Drink more
well, she's
water.
been here longer than I have, so that's why I used it, because I think it goes on before her.
Yes, I think so too.
But we try and keep track of it, so when we look at, if you look at some of the reports I've written about water, water's in a pretty tough position, and we're trying to get it so that it pays its own way. Electric and water generally pay their own way, but
Electric
or
and
electric
sewer.
and sewer, but sometimes they have to help water. Well, I shouldn't say sometimes, they're always helping water.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments before we will call the roll?
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, we did it, guys. Now that is a lot of resolutions.
So if you want to know that sewer, or the revenue bond is like $1.9 million worth of water on South Main Street and $1.4 million worth of sanitary sewer on South Main Street. And then it's like $800,000 worth of water on Mulberry and $600,000 worth of sewer. And then it's $400,000 for the water tower. And then there was $170,000 for a refi and
335 for the radium.
for the radium. So you get a feel for, if you went through the budget, you would see all those items listed. Some of them ended up being a little bit less, but, and then he mentioned that there was an item, we have more money in the one reserve account than we need, so we'll use to pay that down, so it might not be $6 million, probably won't be, but we want to make sure we know what's happening. You know, that's why I've been keeping such close track of the change orders on these projects, because as big as these projects are, they can add up pretty fast, and that it changes how much we have to borrow, and so I'm trying to keep an eye on that. We gave ourselves some contingency, but I want to make sure we don't have to come back and say we need to borrow more.
Because then you don't come out with a good offer, good bid. All right. Well, shall we move on? Anybody have more questions on this part of our agenda? All right. Well, thank you, Betsy, for all your work. Steve, for all your work. I don't know, Dan, did you get much into this? No.
No,
Okay.
not this
We
one.
won't thank you
That's
then for this.
Quarles and Brady is your bond agent.
Yes, okay. All right. Item M, ordinance 1203. Hang on, let me get to this first here. Okay, it's coming in. Would you read, why don't you read the title?
Ordinance 1203, amending City of Lake Mills Ordinance 660-44, official zoning map, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin, parcel 246-0713-2313-000, Topel's Lakeside Park, Trent Topel.
Do we need to read more than that? Or should we read all of it? Is that, we're okay? Okay, we're okay. All right, so now, Steve, are you, who's,
I can give you some insight into
Good.
that, but.
Please do.
What were you going to say, Steve?
Trent is here tonight, and he would like to move to the third reading, if possible.
Oh.
So when you discuss this,
Okay,
consider it. see if that's something that you're willing to do.
Okay.
I have, oh, sorry.
sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to give a little.
Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I have a question about why we're doing a partial lot. I saw in the planner's memo that he acknowledged that you can't, but until there's a CSM that creates a distinct lot for this zoning, how can we rezone a partial lot?
There is a
Ordinance.
CSM. It's been done administratively. We've looked at it and signed off on it. So this is actually zoning that CSM. You are discussing exactly what we've discussed with Trent from the beginning. When we did the 2014 rewrite, and that portion that was the farm field and the driving range had been RD, if you remember, because that's how we got the driving range in there. And then when we came back and redid it, in 14, it went R312, because that's what the trailer park is. And it was one parcel, and so they did it that way. And then Trent came back, and there were some transactions that occurred with one of the sheds that was on the property. He sold that with the house to another owner, and so he wanted to build a new shed. Well, under R312, you have to build to a different standard than you do under RD, so then we gave him the option of doing a CSM, dividing it off, zoning it RD, and doing it through that process, so that's what he's gone through.
Perhaps the ordinance could be amended, especially if we're going to a third reading, if that's what people choose to do, to where it says a portion of parcel and then it gives the parcel number, maybe include as depicted on CSM number, whatever the number of the CSM is. And then at least it shows that we're doing a distinct parcel as opposed to part of a parcel.
We don't have a recorded CSM yet, that's why we.
Usually, don't they have a number, though, before
Only once it's
recorded?
recorded.
This one, well, I couldn't tell you if it did or not. Might be able to pull it out.
Why do we need to do all three tonight?
Because he's got a contractor that wants to start building this weekend.
Coming Thursday. This was supposed to be completed in January, and we were not aware of the zoning change, was never authorized or known about it at all, when it happened in 2014. So we were on the assumption, in fact, Greg Knoll and Troy gave the blessing on this back in October. But when we came up, we found that this zoning had been changed, which I had no knowledge of. And that's why the contract was done, clear is going to be building, and we just would ask if you had to do the third reading up tonight also, please.
Is there any reason why CSM wouldn't be approved?
No, it's just going to have to get recorded.
Yeah. So, because we went through in the planning commission, and that was one of the stipulations behind looking at the rezoning, is making sure it's a separate parcel.
Well, then maybe just say as depicted on a certified survey map to be recorded, or something like that.
Yeah, because we don't want to make the problem worse than it is already. We want to make sure we clear it up, right?
Well, it covers us also. That way they can't come back and say, well, you can't grant that zoning because
There's no parcel.
there's no parcel. Exactly. So we have to stipulate in there that this will be a new parcel. So,
Will that mean for tax records, it'll be a new parcel? You know?
yeah, it'll be a different parcel. Yep.
Well, I guess we have two questions. First of all,
Well, the question I had with Vicky was, is there any reason, I mean, she said the CSM just needs to be registered,
Recorded.
or recorded, excuse me. There's no, nothing that's gonna come back and say, well, no, we can't record that, and
No, I
That
don't
would
see
never
why that would
happen.
happen. Brandon's looked at it, Dustin's looked at it, I've looked at it. All the questions were resolved. Probably the biggest issue was the relocation of County Highway A down there.
yeah.
But that's a county highway issue, not really ours, as to how the driveway attaches. So I think the only thing that was up to, was whether we should require a right-of-way on one side or the other, but I said not at this time, so. It's all done, it's ready to be recorded as soon as we sign it. It just hasn't been brought into that point because we've been kind of waiting for this.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if you wanted to tell us about the
No.
Plan Commission.
No, I think I've really said most everything. There was nobody else there at the hearing. And the only stipulation we had was to make sure that it was recorded and became its own parcel, so we can grant the rezoning. And we recommended to the council that it gets rezoned. So I guess if we decided to go to a third reading, we could just suspend the rules, make a amendment recommendation,
Probably make the amendment, if that's the route you're going.
make the amendment first,
Motion to amend now, conduct a first reading with the amended motion,
and
and then suspend the rules and
rules.
proceed to the third reading, if that's the route you want to go.
I
Okay.
think that sounds good.
So let's work the amendment.
So let's have Vicky make that motion. That was her motion.
I move that ordinance 1203 be amended to read a portion of parcel 246071323130000 as depicted on a certified survey map to be recorded.
And I will second that.
So we have a motion and a second for ordinance. Oh, that's the amendment. That's the amendment for this ordinance, right? This is an amendment. Okay.
The motion was for
A
amendment.
motion to amend, okay. Any discussion? Otherwise, we can vote on the amendment. All right, let's vote on the amendment.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, so now we're on ordinance 1203 as amended. And there's a desire to suspend the rules, to go to third reading.
We still have to vote on
Or do we have to,
the
You
first.
haven't had, yes, it's motion as amended. correct.
as amended?
So we're
then-
good.
So
No,
now,
no, I think you have to go through this process. I believe Vicky just amended the motion.
Right.
Correct, or the ordinance, correct.
so we're now.
This would be approval of the amended ordinance.
But we
Do
want
we-
to suspend the rules
We
and
have
go
to-
to third reading.
Yeah, I
Let's
don't,
go to third reading.
right.
Correct.
Do you have a motion for that?
I will make a motion to suspend the rules and move to the third reading.
Okay, I have a motion to go to third reading. Do I have a
Second.
second? You second? Yep. Okay, so now any discussion on that? All right, let's vote on going to third reading, okay?
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Now we are at the third reading of ordinance 1203 as amended. Any further discussion at this point?
No, should just have her read the title as,
Okay, read the title with the amendment.
Ordinance 1203A, amending City of Lake Mills Ordinance 660-44, official zoning map, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin, parcel 246071323130000, Topel's Lakeside Park, Trent Topel.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, no.
Second.
That's two of you? Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second? Okay. Any just further discussion before we vote? Are we clear and happy? Okay, clear and happy over here? Oh, there we go. Okay, call the roll.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye,
Motion passed 5-0.
we did it.
Good luck.
Sometimes government does get something done. Well, good luck with your work. Wow, that was interesting. It's been a very interesting evening tonight. We're learning all kinds of good things. All right, that was item M. Moving on to item N. Ordinance 1204. Let me get to that item on my thing here. Okay. All right. What, do we want just the title read or the whole thing? No, we want the title. Should we read the whole thing or not? Let's read the title, and then we'll talk more and clarify.
Ordinance 1204, an ordinance annexing territory to the City of Lake Mills, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, parcel number 002-0714-0732-006.
Okay. Now, is there someone who would like to make a motion to, wait, we don't
This is
have
just-
to, this is
First
first
reading.
reading. Yeah, first reading, so we don't even have to do that. Steve, do you want to just kind of explain for the people watching what this is?
This is along County Highway V, Tyranita Park Road. This right here is Rock Creek. This is that electric substation we built there a couple of years ago. And then there's the mini storage and what used to be Osprey. And then these are the houses on the north side. This parcel in the back is in the City of Lake Mills. When the owner originally annexed it, to avoid any issues with creating an island, he didn't annex that. He's now interested in annexing it to, I'm not even going to pretend like I know. But
Its future development plans are, you're not pretending to know that.
So he's just trying to make his whole parcel one piece and have it in the city. So this is his access. It's 66 feet by 300 and some feet. And he's requested it be annexed. We submitted it to the state. The state has responded and said it's fine. We've noticed the town, and the town noticed the residents. But this is consistent with the development plans out there that the city's had in the past, so I don't know that it's really that big of a deal. The property's in the city, which is about 15 acres, so you might as well annex the driveway to it.
This go to planning commission?
No, not an annexation.
You don't have to. Oh, okay.
If it were a development proposal or a zoning proposal, but this is already, the back parcel here is zoned R14,
What is that?
single-family residential.
Oh, it is zoned that?
Yeah.
Still trying to figure out where that is. That doesn't-
Is,
Well, right across, on the other side over here is the Rock Creek Apartments.
The new,
Yeah, so Brewster's, right here is Topeka,
okay, gotcha.
and then just down the street is Brewster, and then if you go up, just across, this was actually part of the parcel that was
Yeah,
where those apartments are.
and these other parcels are,
Single-family lots along the road.
right, but they're all still part of Astalan.
Yes.
Now, is the street access there, is that the dead end? For a while there, that dead ended there?
No.
Or is that different?
No, we looked at a development back there about 14, 15 years ago. Is that what you're thinking of?
Well, we've got the street constructed.
No, that isn't this.
Okay.
We looked at a development back here about 15 years ago, and they were trying to put about quite a few apartments back there.
Yeah.
We told them no, that they had too many. And they either had to build a road across the creek that tied into both ends, to provide access from two directions, or they had to cut the number of residences down to, I think it was 48. Do you remember, Vicki? I think it was 48. He ultimately opted to bring the road in on Brewster. So he worked with Forrest to run Brewster up to that point that abutted his lot. And then he could use Brewster and then run out the other side to East Mills Drive. So that left this parcel pretty unused. At this point in time, he is looking at it and saying, okay, I want that last parcel of that annexed.
What's the plan?
I do not know.
Is the old concern about not creating a town island no longer an issue?
Yes, we only annexed to the middle of the road when we did ours, and he's not annexing any of it, so that strip stays there, so it works.
Okay.
We reviewed it, made sure we had it, and the state has already signed off on it, so it wouldn't be an issue if it were in the town of Lake Mills, because we have an MBA, you can create town islands, but in this case, you can't.
So he could come back to planning commission with a plan to put in?
Yes,
apartments?
certainly could. He's got, probably out of that, he's probably got somewhere between 7 and 9 buildable acres, depending on how he wanted to do it. And it's zoned R1, single family, so he could probably, if I were looking at it, I would say that it would be, I wouldn't say it's like that North Shorewood development we did out there in County Highway V, because that was a real narrow access and they packed them in really tight and they butted them right up against the interstate. You could probably get about the same number in there somewhere between, if you just did single-family homes, I imagine you could get 12, maybe 15 in there. If you did condos, you could probably double that up.
So if this ordinance passes in 3 readings, we'll probably be seeing this again coming through planning commission with some plan. That's what we would expect.
Only the annexation is in front of you tonight.
Yeah, you're asking me to speculate. I have
Right,
not.
but I mean, isn't that a logical?
Yeah, he owns the land to develop it. I would say that at some point he's going to.
Yeah.
The land is already in the city. This is his access to it, so, whether the street is in the town of Aslan or the city of Lake Mills, I don't know if that's a big
Okay.
deal.
All right, okay. So this is first reading tonight,
Yep.
and if somebody has some concerns, they can come to the next meeting and tell us about it, huh? That right?
Yep.
Okay, so that'll move to second reading at our next meeting. And that's it for that one? Okay. Item O, ordinance 1205, amending ordinance 27932. Okay, let me get to that one here. You want to read the title for that one?
Ordinance 1205, amending Chapter 279, building construction, Article 32, water and sewer mains and service pipes.
Okay, what's the story behind this one? We're just doing is this just housekeeping?
Yes.
Okay,
It,
just get rid of extra heavy lead.
right. We're not recommending people put in lead anymore.
That's really a good thing that we're not
Yeah,
doing
so
that.
we're trying to get it out of the ordinance too.
So, okay, so this is just cleaning house here.
Yeah, this is just cleaning up the
And
papers.
it's first reading tonight?
Yep.
And we don't have to do anything else, and you don't need a rush on this. Okay, so, all right. Let's move on to item 10, recommendation for future agendas. I was, on my notes, I had our discussion about College and Ferry and Ferry Drive and Lake Street, but from what was said that we might be better to handle those concerns with increased police surveillance. And,
Presence.
well, and we know it's a temporary problem with the road construction. It's, although we appreciate the residents who brought it to our attention. Excuse me. So maybe we may not need this as a future agenda item?
That's up to you guys, but I don't, a four-way stop, in my opinion, is more of a hazard than a benefit. You already have two of the best traffic calming practices in place in a tight curve and a narrow street. And,
Well, we
the
could
project will be moving through pretty quickly. You'll be down to Lake Street shortly, so they won't be coming down on that north end anymore, so that it'll be less of a concern about four-way traffic. And then, as soon as they move down to East Lake Park Place, the traffic down there will drop off substantially.
If they can get just past Lake Park Place, it'll make life a lot easier.
And, we're looking at somewhere in the first or second week of June, they're gonna hop that for the water and sewer, so they'll be coming along pretty fast with the paving for down to there, so.
It's very nice of the residents to offer their driveway for the police department to sit in. I thought that was really a very nice offer, which maybe the police department would like to take them up on, so we can slow things down a little bit.
There is one thing that I thought that, we have those speed limit signs on the poles as you come into town. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to have one on the north and one on the south end.
Where it drops down to 15 there?
Yeah, couldn't hurt.
Well, I think anytime you remind people about what's going on the road, because there's so much happening when you're driving.
That type of sign, if you put up a regular sign, it takes about 7 days and people stop paying attention. And you can ask people about the sign they just ran through, and they'll have lived here for 40 years and never known there was a sign there. So those type of signs, they light up a little bit, at least for longer period of time, they give some notice. And maybe we can set them up so we can move them around.
Yeah, just because it's going to get busy down there with the holiday week coming up, that's just, all the parks are going to start getting busy in 2 or 3 weeks.
Do we have enough of those signs around? I mean,
We do not have any extras, so we'd have to order those and put them up.
I was gonna say, do we have enough money in budget to do that?
I'll check.
Okay, but if not, maybe that'd be worthwhile to move some money to get those. So if we don't use it after we're done here, there'll be something else somewhere else where wouldn't hurt to keep those down at Bartles Beach to begin with. Slow it down, because that is a congested area.
Yeah, and I think you guys have like $25,000 in your contingency account.
So, okay, well, can you?
Let's hope they don't cost that much.
Yeah. Would you let the police department know about that? Or
Public Works,
how does this happen?
Public Works.
Oh, Public Works, duh,
And
okay.
it'll take the, Public Works will buy them, and the light utility will put them up.
Doesn't the police department have anything to say about it? No? Oh, okay. All righty. So, we don't need to do any council action on that. That can be all handled by staff.
If you're comfortable with that, we'll do that.
I'm happy with that.
Well, let's not make a decision. It's a violation of open meetings. Let's just, if you want to discuss this on a future agenda, let's go that route.
Do we need to discuss it, or have we discussed it enough that it can just be?
I'll take care of it.
Sounds good. Sorry, Dan. Thank you, though. We appreciate that. Okay, anybody else have anything for future agendas? Can I ask a question of clarification? So with all that stuff, all these resolutions we passed, we don't have to have a special meeting in June for that?
No, that's why we set up the parameter issues, so that
Yeah.
we can get around having a special meeting.
Okay, well, that's good. That was nice of them.
Yep.
Saves us a meeting. Okay, well, then unless somebody else has something for the agenda,
Yeah.
we're going to convene. Would you read the number 11, please?
Got something, Mike?
Oh,
No, go ahead.
okay. Number 11, would you read, please?
Convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stats 19.85 Sub 1G, conferring with legal counsel who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to be involved.
Motion to move into closed session.
So move.
Okay, second?
Second.
Got a second, and would you call the roll?
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, and we will reopen in after, but it will not be televised, so thank you for watching tonight. All right, and I don't have to do the gavel because we're not ending the meeting. All right.